Hope's End. The buzzing of my phone pulled my eyes away from the road. An image of a smirking, dark-haired woman and the words Heartbreaker filled the phone's screen. I thought about answering it and screaming at her to call Dylan. He'll keep you warm at night while I'm working. Dylan is more trustworthy, too. What an upgrade you made, you selfish wench, scoffed Jack. But that wouldn't really scratch the itch. I imagined her on the road ahead of me, rolling over the top of my car before crashing behind me on the concrete. My phone buzzed again, and again Heartbreaker was displayed on the screen. I reached for the phone just as the screeching of tires and the blaring of a horn pulled my eyes back to the road. An ambulance trying its best to warn me of the oncoming head-to-head collision. Pulled the steering wheel back hard into my lane, narrowly swerving around the ambulance. Its sirens grew quiet as it pulled away down the road. I exhaled and unclenched my grip on the steering wheel. Well, hey, I thought. If I did get in a wreck, better an ambulance, right? Someone else's life was probably in danger, though. God, I'm awful, I admitted out loud. Slouching back in my seat, I looked in the rearview mirror at my art supplies poking up out of the back seat, slightly obscuring my vision of the road behind me. Adjusting the rearview mirror, I checked that my hair looked okay and pushed a few sandy blonde strands back into place behind my glasses. I tried to smile. I was on the way to my first day on the job as a security guard. An artist in the area who owns a private studio and gallery. Why this artist would need a private security guard to watch the place overnight was beyond me. However, I paid very well and I was told I would have free time I could spend how I like so long as the job was being done well. The perfect opportunity to paint in what I imagine will be a beautiful location, surrounded by inspiration and art. The road wound to the left, and the no outlet sign I was looking for came into view. Turning the car down the heavily wooded road, the twisting branches overhead and dense foliage blotted out what little sunlight was left in the darkening sky. Turned my brights on and eased off the gas. The isolated road stretched on into a veil of dark trees my headlights could not pierce. I drove in silence, the evening breeze stifled by the woods. The world lay still around me, reminiscent of an animal listening after a predator snaps a twig. A hot buzzing sensation pricked at my right cheek, and urge to stare into the night festering. The urge to snap my head and catch whatever was staring at me. It built into something unbearable. Just as I was about to give in, the tree line came into view. A building at the end of the road centered on a black frame of dark trees and pavement. A twilight sky as the backdrop. I could see that it was one of those modern buildings. Flat white walls with oddly jutting architecture of contrasting colors, and an unsettling amount of glass revealing everything inside. Tall ferns and red pots, rows of painting lining the walls of the hallways, and the men standing in the doorway. Deep breath, Jax. You already have the job, I muttered, wiping my hands dry. I put the car in park in the roundabout driveway and got out. Mr. Hope. A statement, not a question. The voice of a professional. Yep, I said. I'm Jack. Talked on the phone yesterday. Your shift starts at 10 p.m., said the man, turning away, already stepping inside. I checked my watch. It read 9:52. Late, I sighed. I was supposed to arrive a half hour early for orientation. The man was already inside, walking toward a desk just off to the right of the front door. Mr. Brown, right? I asked. What do I need for the shift? He didn't even so much as cock his head to the side to better hear what I was saying. Either he couldn't hear me or couldn't be bothered to listen. I left my car and stepped inside. My glasses immediately fogged from the sudden temperature shift, and I rubbed at the goosebumps on my arm. Hold on. I need my jacket, I said, turning back towards the door. There isn't time. Again, not a suggestion, but a command. Oh, well, okay, I thought, deciding I would just get the jacket later. I stepped over to the desk, my footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Listen closely. Mr. Brown turned around with a flashlight and a folder. Here are the flashlight and rules for the evening. The keys to the lockup are in the top drawer. The lights for the building are next to the desk. Read the rules quickly and get started. Should you have any questions, I will answer them in the morning. Your shift ends at 0600. Trust the rules. Dropping the flashlight and folder into my hand, he stepped towards the door. Mr. Brown gripped the handle and opened my mouth to speak once more. There's a jacket in the bottom drawer. Good luck. The soft latching of the door closing behind him echoed throughout the hallways. I could hardly hear his black SUV as Mr. Brown started it and drove off. I opened the desk drawer and found the jacket. Navy blue is security printed in bright yellow on the back. I put it on, sat down, and opened the file. Inside was a single piece of paper with rules of the job. I started reading through them. The black door in the basement is to remain closed at all times. What basement? I scanned the area around me and found the basement door was directly behind me. How did I not notice that before? It was one of the only sections of wall that wasn't glass. I really need to pay better attention. Sounds like something Heartbreaker would say. At the start of your shift, check that all windows and doors are locked, except for the door mentioned in rule number 1. At 10:30 p.m., uncover the painting and Evening in Red with a sheet and promptly uncover it at 10:45 p.m. Oddly specific. Look at the floor when walking through the West Wing. Never look up, no matter what you might see or hear. An uneasy feeling stirred in the bottom of my stomach. Music will start to play at midnight. When this happens, turn off the lights to the building and get under the security desk. The feeling grew and I quickly read through the last few rules. If you hear breathing, hold your breath until it stops. At 3 a.m., turn the breaker off in the basement and follow its instructions. At 3:15 a.m., make sure you are in the West Wing. Do not leave this wing until 3:30 a.m. From 5:55 a.m. to 6 a.m., run. Don't listen to what he is saying. There's no way this is real, I laughed. I decided there wasn't any harm in following the rules, probably just a mean-spirited joke. I looked out the window to the right of me as the last of the twilight sky rolled beyond the hills. The watch beeped. 10 o'clock. Well, better start locking up, I thought, but before I do, I smiled to myself, got up, and went outside. 10 minutes later, I had an easel set up with a fresh canvas and some paints laid out on the desk. I figured there'd be no harm in killing time painting. This building was full of inspiration, just like I imagined. I glanced over a particularly interesting painting, a red kite on the moon, the earth in the background. But the water was red and the land a pale brown. It was unnerving, but beautiful. Better get started, I said to the empty room. Reaching into the top drawer, I grabbed the keyring, got up from the desk, and made my way counterclockwise through the building, my footsteps echoing softly through the halls. I kept an eye out for the painting with the label reading in Evening in Red. The dark forest on my right drew my eyes. The light from the building shone a measly 10 feet. I tried not to think about it, tried to avoid the hair standing on end, the hot buzzing sensation crawling down my spine, the urge to spin around and look. Finally, I found the painting I was looking for. It was in the North Hall. It was an image of a meadow full of red flowers lit by a late autumn sky, loving detail given to each petal. The painting was lovely, but it felt wrong. I got the same feeling looking into the painting that I did looking at the dark woods behind me. Oh, grow up, Jack. It's just the woods, I told myself. Pulling my eyes away, I locked the secondary door directly from the painting and kept moving. The building was shaped like a rectangle, just 4 halls looping into each other. There was a basement, apparently, but I had no reason to go down there until 3 a.m. as per the rule number 7. I reached the West Wing and remembered the rule to look at my feet just as I crossed the threshold. As I approached the hall, I noticed that this wing had no windows, just solid brick walls. Not even the same smooth white drywall like the rest of the building. A soft thud brought me to a halt. A second thud, and my heart began to pick up pace. A third thud. It was coming from somewhere else in the building. I walked to the southern wing, back to the start, and heard a fourth thud. It was coming from the east wing. Looked up to see 3 figures outside the windows. Thud. An egg cracked against the glass, its yolk running slowly down the glass. Hey, I said weakly, and again trying to instill more authority in my voice. Hey! Wait, they can't hear me, I realized. I unlocked the front door and came around to the side. You kids can't be egging the windows, I suggested. Not a command. Oh, run, boys, hiked the voice, followed by hurried steps. By the time I got around the corner, they were already gone. I looked over at the window. 5 egg yolks froze into the glass at various heights. Dang. I wonder if I'm supposed to clean that up. Checked my watch. 10:28. I headed back to the building, conceding to cleaning up the egg later, and found the painting again in the north wing. A new figure was in the painting, A woman. She had long red hair, a dark red dress, and was looking straight at me. Her face was made up of only red eyes. They were open wide and locked with mine. I fumbled with my jacket and covered the painting as quickly as I could. I checked my watch, 10:31. The feeling in my gut grew to a nauseating level. Did I miss that lady in the painting before? Had she always been there? She was a small detail. I could have missed her, but she was definitely there the second time. Front door opened. I had forgotten to lock it behind me. Saw footsteps approach the west wing. Was it those teenagers again? Stepping closer to the west wing and listened to the footsteps drawing closer. I peered down the hall quickly and saw a body lying on the floor. His navy blue jacket stained with blood. Footsteps stopped at what sounded like halfway down the west wing hall. All I can see was the body. I backed away from the hall, my heart beating hard in my chest. The sounds of paper fluttering came from behind me. I took quick but cautious steps back to the desk, peered around the corner, and saw the folder and the rules list had been scattered on the floor. Then I watched in horror as my easel lifted a foot in the air and splintered violently against the window. This wasn't worth $4.50 a night. Dropping the keyring in the lobby, I ran out to my car, half concealed in darkness. My fingers were trembling as I fumbled the car key. The key slid smoothly into the lock when it popped with a twist. Jumping into the car, I locked the door and went for the ignition. Nothing. Not even the clicking of an effort to start. No, come on! I wrenched the key forward again and again. Nothing. A twig snapped in the woods to my left. I scanned the forest while moving as little as possible. Painting my eyes back and forth against the black tree line, the wind rustling the leaves and branches, I tried the car again. And again, nothing. Another twig snapped. Closer this time. I looked into the dark and caught the faintest shifting of tree limbs, followed by the snapping of another twig. Something was stepping out of the woods. I jumped out of the car, not even closed the door behind me, and ran back into the building. Closed the door behind me, nearly dropping the keys, and locked the door. The painting! I checked the watch, 10:44. I ran back to the north wing and pulled the jacket smartly away from the painting. The girl was gone. I let a sigh of relief and sucked in a breath of cold air. Slipped the jacket back on and made my way to the desk, picking up the paper and the folder. Checked the rules. Nothing else for an hour and a half. All I had to do was sit here. Easy enough. I checked the light switches, made sure they worked. The building was plunged into darkness with only a single switch. Snapped it back on. No need to be in the dark if I don't need to be. I checked the building one more time, making certain that there was no one else here, and sat down at the desk. Quiet washed over me. I took deep breaths, trying to steady my heart rate. 15 minutes passed, and I decided to try and calm myself down with painting, easel or not. I just propped my canvas up on the desk when my phone rang, from an unknown number. Hello? I said, answering the phone. Hello, this is Mr. Brown. I just wanted to check up on you. Many prospects leave after the first hour. I wasn't sure what to say. I was scared and wanted to leave, but I also didn't want to disappoint. Plus, my car is dead. I think I made a few mistakes, I admitted. What rules? Depending on the rule, you could be quite the bit of Mr. Brown's cut off and heavy static. Hello? Hello? Yes, I'm still here, said Mr. Brown, his voice cutting through the static. Well, I was late to cover the painting and I left the front door unlocked. I think somebody entered the building, but I haven't seen anyone. Did you hear footsteps? Yes. Where did he go? Think clearly, Mr. Hope. This is quite an important detail. No, west. The west wing. Understood. You should be fine. The door's locked now, right? Yes. Good. Just follow the rest of the rules, and you'll be okay. It's almost midnight. I'd make sure you knew the lights. It can be quite fast. What? Almost midnight? It's maybe 11:05. My watch, 5 till midnight. Mr. Brown, what? How is it midnight? The line was already dead. The call must have dropped. How is it already midnight? I waited the last few minutes, watched my watch strike midnight, and probably shut the lights off and made for the desk. The music started. Not really music, though. Just the first few notes of a song repeating over and over softly. There was some kind of odd, metallic instrument playing along. I strained my neck and tried to listen. 2 evenly spaced quarter notes, followed by 2 quick eighth notes. The instrument made a clicking sound, stopped, then burst back into song. Much more rapidly, straight 16th notes now. Not an instrument. Feet. What was I supposed to be heading from? I noticed that I had leaned my head out to listen to the sounds and tucked back under the desk, cursing my stupidity. The 16th notes grew louder, slowed down. I switched original 2 quarter and 2 eighth notes. The sounds changed. Metal on wood. No longer metal on marble. It was crawling over the desk, and I could hear a soft whirring noise. Then it breathed, a ragged breath. Rule 6 filled my mind with panic, and I sharply inhaled. The feet stopped. I'm dead. No way was I coming back from this one. A minute dragged by, and I could still hear the rasping breath. My lungs burned, and I could feel the rising pressure in the pit of my stomach. Then the music stopped, followed by the breathing, and I attempted to stifle my exhale. I sat in silence, drawing in deep, quiet breaths, feeling the oxygen rush around my body. In, out. I kept telling myself to breathe. I willed my hands to unclench, wincing at the indications left in my palm as I tried to flex my hands. I listened for anything, satisfied that whatever it was now gone. I held it off from under the desk and peeked over the top. The top of the desk now looked like a well-used cutting board. I felt along the divots. They were jagged, like a serrated knife had been used to cut meat here on my desk. My meat being butchered. Would I scream? Or pass out from shock? How long would it take me to die? How long would it take for someone to find my body? But Mr. Brown just bring me out back and find some new college grad, desperate for money, sacrifice to this place. I shuddered at the thought. He can't seriously expect me to survive this night. I had only a few rules that I had yet to experience. I trusted Rule 5, and I'm still alive. I resigned to trust the rules for now. Think of what was next. The breaker in the basement, and its rules. Time came to turn off the breaker. Cool air flowed past me when I opened the basement door. The smell of salt filled my nostrils. Looking at the switch next to me, I took a tentative first step. The board fiendishly announced my presence. I held my hand against the stone wall and crept down the stairs. Tensed, body half turned, ready to spring up the stairs should anything happen. 3 steps left. 2 steps. 1. My foot landed on the concrete floor. The unfinished basement walls concealed the gray many shadows. The landing was isolated from the rest of the basement, and there was an unfinished frame where a door would go 3 feet in front of me to the left. I inched closer to the frame and listened for a moment. Hearing only the sound of my heart, I peered around the corner. The room was bare, save for a black double door on the far side and a solitary breaker on the left wall. The double door was chained shut, a tall line of salt across the floor. There was even salt placed on top of the door frame. I took a closer look at the door frame I was peering through. Salt filled the crevices in the unfinished wall, surrounded by the frame. My watch read 2:58. It was now or never. I took the first steps into the room. Just beyond the threshold, the room shifted in temperature. It was hot, swelteringly so. Stepping up to the breaker, I grabbed it, checked my watch, 2:59. With a beep, the screen changed to 3. I pulled the lever down and the dim light in the basement went out. "Don't let go," whispered a voice behind me. Every muscle in my body locked tight. Hot breath fell on my neck, and still I felt a chill run down my spine. "Good. Now stand perfectly still." The door of the basement creaked open and thudding footsteps began a slow descent. A deep moan echoed down the stairs and the floorboards creaked with the uneven pace of the horrifying, painstakingly approaching. I counted the steps in my head. 1, 2, 3. It was halfway down. My fists clenched tighter on the breaker. I could feel my heart beat in the palm of my hand. "Wrong!" It was a slow whisper, but it was loud, right in my ear. I said, "perfectly still." I felt the sharp poking in my side and I resisted the urge to flinch, fearing what would happen if I did. "Better," chuckled the whispering voice. The footsteps continued their slow descent. Another moan echoed, louder than before. It was full of sorrow and pain, the moan of a creature hungry for release. 1, 2, 3 more steps. With a soft slap, the horror reached the bottom of the steps. The creaking, now replaced by feet shuffling. It was somehow slower on an even plane. The steps were sporadic. I'd take her 2 or 3 steps in quick succession, and still, like it was tired, or perhaps like it was listening. Maybe it couldn't see in the dark. I tried to take small comfort in the thought. Another one filled the basement and the source turned the corner into the basement proper. Its chilling moan was all too clear with nothing to break line of sight. Yes, yes, whispered the voice. The steps stopped directly behind me, the smell of rot now filling my nostrils. Now, run! A wet and meaty hand grabbed my shoulder. Panicking, I dropped to the floor out of its grasp. Scrambling on the floor, I made my way towards where I thought the exit was. Stay down here. Silently cursing, I found my feet, placed my hands on the wall, and tried to run away from the horror. The footsteps shuffled towards me. They were slow, but steady now, enticed by the idea of catching me. I circled around the room, trying to keep away from it. It moaned again as it picked up its pace. I felt its hand graze me as it dove headfirst into the wall next to me. Its body crumpled loudly to the floor before rising again. Now you may turn on the breaker and leave, whispered the voice. I circled around the room, trying to find the switch. Fingers finding the gap where the door frame was. I crossed it and kept circling until, again, I found the door frame. The voice laughed at my torment. Come on, turn the breaker on, Jack, taunted the voice. Jack, moaned the creature. Its pace once again picked up. It dove for me again. Panicked, I dove into the middle of the room and tripped. There wasn't anything in the middle of the room to trip over. I put my way back and found a metal cylinder, thin enough to my hand fit all the way around. I tugged on it and it shifted to one side. Realizing what I had found, I flipped the breaker. The light came on, illuminating an empty room. The creature that had been pursuing me was nowhere to be seen. I checked my watch, 3:14, and ran. Turning to the west wing, I remembered to look down only after I had taken 3 large steps into the hall. I slowed my pace to walk, stopped, hunched over, tried to catch my breath. My watch read 3:16 a.m. Had it turned to 3:16? Had I made it into the wing on time? I didn't hear anything happening. The lights didn't flicker. It was utterly silent. As I stood there staring at the ground, watching my breath, I thought to myself, would I do this again? Was 4:50 a night worth it? Now that I know to take this seriously, I could possibly do this a whole lot better next time. I've made a few mistakes, but I'm still alive. Only 2.5 hours left until it was over. What rules do I have left? From 5:55 a.m. to 6 a.m., run. 10. Don't listen to what he is saying. The last 2 would make or break the night. Run for 5 minutes? How fast did I have to run? From what to where, and who is he? Is him Mr. Brown? Or someone else? Something else? Sound. My ears were flooded with sound, bone vibrating amounts of sound. I covered my ears and hunched over, dizzy with the volume. The sound of multiple jet engines erupted from nowhere. I panned around trying to see anything without lifting my vision too far up. I thought I could see the sound waves. It's a miracle the glass is not shattered. Help! Screamed the woman's voice, barely audible over the roar of sound. It sounded like it was coming from below me. That would be impossible. No way I would hear anyone downstairs. She must be in one of the adjacent halls. You up there, help! It's quite loud and hot. I'm scared, screamed the woman. Up there? I thought. She really is downstairs. Checked my watch. Only 10 more minutes until 3:30. A siren warbled, adding itself to the noise, furthering the pressure in my eardrums. Ah! Wailed the woman. There was no way I would be able to hear her now. I'm no fool. I curled up on the floor to try and shelter myself from the noise so much as possible. I found myself staring at an air vent. I could hear her crying, a tiny sound bouncing off the interior walls of the air ducts. A high-pitched ring joined the sound. The ringing made my head swim. Did the artist have some girl trapped in the basement? Or was it really a scary, haunting painting calling me? The sound stopped. I watched her at 3:30. I stayed there, curled in the fetal position with my ears still ringing, thinking about the woman. Her voice sounded familiar to me. One last rule to go. Run. My phone rang again. It was the same number that called me earlier. It was Mr. Brown. Jack. Hello, said Mr. Brown. I didn't say anything. Jack, answer me. It's quite rude to ignore someone speaking to you. Yeah, I'm here, I sighed. Listen, something is wrong. I'm on my way. What? I sat up straight. What's wrong? You'll have to trust me. If I'm not there by 5:55, open the black door and get inside. But, rule number 1, as before, I'll be... Mr. Brown's cut off with static. Hello? I said, pressing redial over and over. Hello? Damn. I stood up and walked to the front door, checking it was locked, and walked back to my desk. And back to the front door, back to the desk, door, desk, back and forth. I passed the time until 5:55, pacing, making sure my shoes were tied. I couldn't afford to trip while running. Maybe whatever I had to run from was outside. Maybe it would come up from the basement. I propped my chair up under the handle of the basement door. I continued my pacing. My desk shifted 3 inches to the right, and I felt the hot buzz of fear and panic start from the nape of my neck, drive down my spine and into my stomach. Twisting around to see what moved the desk, I checked the time. 5:55. It was time to run. But from what? The desk lurched again, and I felt something grab at my leg. I kicked out and instinctively found air, cold tendrils crawling up from the veins in my foot. I turned to run and found I could not move my leg. I lost my balance and fell flat on my back, the air rushing out of me. A second icy tendril grabbed my other foot and started to drag me. I kicked again and felt one foot come free. Turning onto my newly freed foot, I threw myself in the opposite direction. My second foot came free. Coming to my feet, I ran, barreling down the south wing towards the west wing. Turning the corner, I looked dead ahead. Rule be damned. The body, the one from earlier, was there, now standing with its head hanging low. I stood against the wall, only turning slowly as I ran past it. A crash behind me let me know my pursuer was giving chase. I turned into the north wing. My heart was racing and thumped in time with my frantic footsteps. The paintings on the walls were yanked from the wall and thrown with great force into the glass. 2 paintings back. 1 painting between me and the invisible force. I turned the corner, my desk coming into view. It was in pieces. I imagined a similar fate befalling my... should I be caught, ripped, smashed, and torn to pieces, scattered around the room. A mess for someone else to clean up. A second set of deep breathing joined in with mine. 2 events at once? Do I need to hold my breath? Can I hold it and keep this pace? I took a deep breath and slammed my mouth shut, still running for my life. The breathing was keeping in pace with me. The invisible force threw another painting into the glass, only 2 paintings behind me. Running through the south wing, my lungs were already protesting far more oxygen. Back into the west wing, the body was now turned to face me and began to shuffle towards me. I locked eyes with my own face, my bloodshot eyes looking back at me with hunger. The painting directly behind me pulled from the wall. I tried to focus on my feet. Left, right, help! Called the woman from downstairs. In the north wing, splintered paintings littered the floor. The breathing stopped and I took no time greedily sucking in air. Something cold licked my heels. I pushed myself harder. Please, help me, called the woman again. I placed the voice. It was Heartbreaker. I turned into the east wing and saw the basement door was open. I checked my watch and best I could. Did it say 5:55? Only been 2 minutes. I could already feel myself slowing down. Finally, I had no choice. Ran into the basement, pulled the chair aside, stepped in, and slammed the door shut behind me. The invisible force slammed into it behind me, sending shivers of wood spraying all over me. Another slam, and the hinges threatened to give away. I found the handrail and rushed down the stairs, turning on into the basement proper and coming face to face with the black door. The basement door banged loudly in the concrete behind me and settled loudly on the concrete. I turned towards the door, felt for the keys, and found a lone key made of black metal. The basement door was shoved aside, only feet behind me. Help! Let me out! Pleaded Heartbreaker. I covered the few feet, slid the lock into the keyhole, removed the chains, and stopped. Is this the right choice? The thought filled my mind. I didn't have time to think about it. The rules say never to open this door, but I had broken many other rules and survived. Besides, Mr. Brown called and said to do it. The air around my neck began to chill as cold tendrils reached me. Did the severity for breaking the rule increase as the list went on? I'd broken rules 2, 3, 4. Survived. Did she deserve to be stuck behind this door? Was I saving her life or condemning it by opening it? She had betrayed my trust once before. Did she deserve this fate just for being unfaithful? Did the punishment match the crime? Perhaps I should forgive her. Trust she won't break my heart again. I slid the door aside and dove in. Cold hands were on my neck uncoiling as I stepped in. A solitary painting hung on the opposite wall, lit by a single hanging light bulb. In it, a tall man dressed in black was surrounded by an ocean of red. There was no one in sight. No heartbreaker. I turned, braced for the force, and the moment passed. Then another moment passed. Then a third. I checked my watch. 6 a.m.? Hello? Called Mr. Brown from the top of the stairs. Oh, God, is it over? I yelled out, stepping out of the room, or at least trying to step out of the room. The air was solid across the doorway. Mr. Brown stepped out from the hallway. Stepping over the fallen door, he said, "What are you doing? I told you to trust the rules." "But you said," I stammered, "when you called." "I didn't call you. I told you I would answer questions in the morning." He stepped closer to the door. "Step out to there." "I can't. The air is quite solid," I said, pressing my hands against the air. "I see." Mr. Brown stepped up, gripped the door handle, and said, "Rule 10. Don't listen to him." Then slid the door shut. The Wind Whisperer. There was once a story my mother used to tell me, in hopes I wouldn't turn out like my father. "Treat your children right, Tommy, or the Wind Whisperer will come to punish you." A boogeyman from my childhood, something I thought was just a myth, turned out to be quite real. A being described with immense power, essentially a modern trickster god that taught lessons in exchange for extreme emotional distraught on which it fed. I may have been a horrible father, but I wasn't just going to let the Wind Whisperer keep my son after stealing him away from me. Leaving my child to that monster would surely result in his death. It had been a somewhat muggy day, clouds covering the sky like a blanket covers the bed. I had been guilt-tripped by my ex-wife to take Andy to a park to play, her words of how I never spend time with him burrowing deep into my conscience. I conceded to her nagging if only to appease my guilt. Andy, a bright blonde-headed boy with blue eyes, was enthused to be able to spend some time with his dad. After all, little boys like him considered their fathers superheroes at that age. I could have cared less what he thought of me. The sad truth was that I considered him a parasite rather than my child. The child support I had to pay for him stole most of an already shitty paycheck. Plus, I knew I would soon grow out of the phase where he thought the sun rose and set in my ass, so what was the point of trying to have a relationship with him? Deep down, I truly did love him, but I knew no matter what, I'd end up getting burned. I sighed as I shifted the gears of my old beat-up Camaro, pulled into the closest park I could find. It was one of those shitty roadside parks with only a few swings, a slide, and a few rusty monkey bars. Judging from Andy's excited bouncing in his car seat, one would have thought I took him to Disney World. I buckled him and helped him out of the car, his overstuffed jacket looking quite ridiculous on his small frame. Andy looked up at me with wide, eager eyes. "So, what do you want to play first, Daddy?" I avoided his gaze as I searched my pockets for cigarettes. "Right now, Daddy just wants to smoke. How about you go and play by yourself for a bit? Maybe I'll come join you later," I responded. Andy looked down, dejected. "Oh, okay," he replied, trying to hide his disappointment and failing. My heart had a twinge of pain, and a part of me almost changed my mind. But I shook my head. What's the point? He'll hate me in a few years. No point in getting attached, I thought. Andy somberly walked over to the slide, his bleak demeanor reflecting foggy, dreary day. However, he soon began to cheer up, the wonders of a simple slide distracting his childish self from his depressed reality. I leaned against the car, blowing smoke rings into the air. I only half watched my child, more so out of the fear of my ex-wife's ire rather than for the safety of my son. I knew I was a horrible parent, but why should I care? As soon as my marriage troubled, I lost all hope of having a family again. The reflection of the middle-aged man in my side-view mirror caught my attention and nearly made me jump. However, upon closer inspection, the man was me. Here I was, my mid-20s, with severely unkempt black hair and a fair amount of stubble on my face with more gray in it than I would ever want. It looked like a husk. My dark eyes sunk into my gaunt face. I was essentially a walking corpse. It didn't help that I was still dressed like a teenager, with torn jeans, Converses, an obscure rock band t-shirt, and a leather jacket to boot. I groaned, placing my head on my arms as I leaned against the car, turning my back to the park. I was just an old man trying to fit in at this point. I had kept my Andy in the corner of my eye, watching him play by his lonesome. Took my eyes off him for just a moment, but that was all that was needed. As soon as I turned around, I immediately knew something was wrong. The already thick fog had gotten thicker, so thick that I almost thought walking into it would have been walking to a creamy soup. However, the strangest thing wasn't the sudden thickening of the fog, but rather the fact that the fog had seemingly formed a large circle around the park as if it was in the eye of some sort of strange storm. Next thing I noticed was Andy, or rather, the lack of him. He was gone. Despite my perspiration increasing, my blood turned ice cold. I had lost my son. What do I care? He's just some brat I'm related to. An intrusive thought popped into my mind. To my surprise, I thought myself as if there was another part of me that loathed that side of my mind. I shook my head to gather my thoughts. Andy? Where are you, buddy? I called out, wondering if maybe he was hiding on purpose. Maybe he was more upset at me than I initially thought. It wouldn't be an unreasonable feeling, but it didn't change the fact I was slowly growing angry. Andy, if you don't come out here this instant, I swear to God, I shouted, soon trailing off as my eyes followed the coming of the wind whisperer. At first, it was hard to discern the entity from the fog, as his body was mostly ethereal. It was as if the wind whisperer was made entirely of mist, with only his floating, clawing hands and sadistically twisting face seeming to have any actual semblance to them. I observed him a bit closer, noticing he had no lower body. In place of legs was only a spectral tail, much like one would see on a cartoon ghost. But that brought no comfort to me, as the rest of the spectre was much more disturbing. Claws that sat in place of where fingers should have been were easily a foot long, and they seemed eternally drenched in dripping blood. His face was gaunt as if he had not eaten in a very long time, and he had only a few patches of pale white hair sticking out of his somewhat bulbous head. The spectre first flowed slowly towards me, but when fear gripped my mind and demanded I run, it quickly dissolved into nothingness, only to reappear right in my face, his sinister smile widening. Dear God, I whispered, falling backward. The wind whisperer lowered his face to mine, never breaking eye contact with me. His eyes were a milky light blue, with tiny pinprick pupils barely visible, staring straight into my soul. Finally, he spoke, haunting me to my core. God? He asked, then chuckled. He floated away from my face, allowing me to breathe for the first time since I saw him. The wind whisperer spread his arms, looking to his right, his left, down to the ground, and finally up to the sky. I see no God. I see no devil. Only you and I, Thomas Strode. We have much work to do. The wind whisperer spoke, shaking me back into reality. I was petrified. So every time he spoke, it felt as if a million insects were crawling underneath my skin. What do you want from me? I demanded. The wind whisperer's smile widened, his literal cheek splitting as the seams of blood gushed from his mouth. He placed his claws on the back of my head and whispered into my ear. It's not about what I want. It's about what you want. Or are you truly so terrible that you just so easily abandon little Andy? I paled, what little color I had left in my face. In all of my fear, I had neglected to think about where Andy was in all of this. The poor kid was probably even more scared than myself. Where's my son, you bastard? I asked, surprising even myself. Seemingly satisfied with my response, the wind whisperer remained quiet, when nodding towards my car. He then vanished, a strong breeze blowing his form away like he was smoke. Almost immediately, I jumped up, desperately rushing towards the Camaro. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I felt as if I would be safer in the car versus outside in the mist. As if to confirm my suspicions, I saw numerous dark figures appear in the fog. They all had disproportionate humanoid shapes, some had arms that were too long or heads that were too large. The only consistent thing about them was that they all terrified me. Took me no time at all to get into the car. I wasn't about to drop my keys or trip over nothing like some horror movie cliche. I thrust the keys into the ignition and the Camaro roared to life. I actually smiled, something finally going my way. The dark humanoid shadows began latching on all over the car. The one that was over the driver's door had a huge light bulb-shaped head. In place of eyes, there were simply holes, dozens of them. It had a tiny mouth, and when it opened to growl at me, it saw hundreds of straight, stark white human teeth. The Camaro slammed hard into the asphalt, popping two of the tires. The monsters were lifting the car and dropping it in hopes to lure me out. Pulled my head away from the steering wheel, which I had just slammed into, only for Lightbulb Head to smash its massive cranium into my window. It was attempting to get to me, as were the other shadows. One on the hood had the shape of a man who was only a torso, but yet it seemed whatever sick being created had placed his legs directly under his arms, giving him the appearance of some sort of twisted human-insect hybrid. The horde on my left appeared to be some sort of conjoined twins, with the larger head on the shoulders, constantly chewing on the cheeks of its smaller sister. It was trying to slide its thin fingers in between the barely lowered window. Its pointer finger elongated with sickening cracks as it tried to reach for the button to unlock the door. Quickly jumped to the passenger seat and rolled the window up, cutting off the fingers of the conjoined twins. It hissed in pain, but its fingers began operating by themselves, writhing around on the floorboards, tendrils erupting from all over, whipping around. "Fuck, fuck, fuck!" I screamed, scrambling back to the passenger seat. The sound of the window shattering behind me made my blood run cold as I felt the hands of Lightbulb Head wrap around me. It made a groaning noise that sounded like a mix of a woman in pleasure and a building collapsing, and then sunk its hundreds of human teeth into my shoulder. I winced. The feeling of my blood being sucked out of my body nearly caused me to faint. Without thinking, I flailed about until I hit the horn in the middle of the steering wheel. All of the horror stopped their attack, groaning a variety of different noises that indicated pain. Thinking quickly, I tore the keys out of the ignition and sounded the car alarm. The monsters hissed in pain and each began popping like balloons, black sludge exploding everywhere. Panting heavily, I kicked the driver's door open, nearly slipping in the black sludge that covered the ground. Out of nowhere, the Wind Whisperer's voice boomed across the sky. "Congratulations. You have passed my first trial, the test of fear. You have one more." I looked to the heavens but saw nothing. Trial? Test? What is this bullshit? Where's my son? I demanded. I was tired of playing games with this monster. "Where is your son, indeed?" the Wind Whisperer mused. "I could tell you, but you must complete my next trial before I reveal your son to you." I nearly screamed out in rage, but instead took a deep breath. "Fine. What does he want me to do?" Instead of replying, the Wind Whisperer simply materialized in front of me and plunged the tip of one of its massive claws into my left eye. I screamed in pain and fell to my knees, just barely able to comprehend what the Wind Whisperer said next. "This is your test of pain. Feel it and reflect upon what pain you have brought onto the world," he whispered, and soon I was racked with visions of my past. My abusive and neglective father beating my mother until the day I sent him to the hospital for good. The first time I met my high school sweetheart, and the day she had a beautiful baby boy, our baby, Andy. Andy's first words, his first steps, the day I married my wife, then our first big fight over bills, which led to fights over Andy, and then fights about each other. So the day I finally just left when she compared me to my father, and so I did what she and the universe wanted. I accepted that role. But then I saw a memory that wasn't mine. It was Andy's, laying in his bedroom the night I left, crying softly, begging to God, Jesus, anyone who might be listening to bring his daddy back. His claw slid out of my eye socket and blood gushed out onto my face, but I no longer cared. I only wanted one thing. "Take me to Andy," I stated. I didn't ask, or even demand it this time. It was as if I was going to find my son, no matter what the Wind Whisperer had to say. Up to this point, I hadn't been going through this hell for Andy, but rather myself. Now that was going to change. The spectral monster smirked and disappeared once more. This time, however, the mist finally lifted, revealing the cloudy day that I had started with. Without a word, I limped over to my car. The tires were still popped, but they wouldn't do until I got where I needed to be. The Wind Whisperer hadn't told me where Andy was, but as soon as I saw the clouds break and sunlight pour out a few miles down the road, I knew where to go. The roads were empty, and while it was difficult to drive in my condition as well as the car's condition, I was able to make it back to my ex-wife's house fairly quickly. I didn't even wait for the car to completely stop before I got out. Started limping up the driveway, looking up the hill to where the house sat. Then I saw him. Andy waving to me from his bedroom window, a large smile on his face. Tears filled my good eye as relief washed over my body. Andy? Oh, thank God, my baby boy, you're okay. I stopped, the whole feeling of horror washed over my body. Dear God, Andy, no! Andy just continued to wave with that same smile on his face. Except it wasn't a smile. Andy's lower jaw had been ripped off and both of his eyes gouged out. His arm had been ripped off, the bloody stump at the end becoming more visible the closer I looked at it. But how is he still moving? That's when I saw a face. His damn face. Flashed from behind my baby boy. His hands operating my son's corpse like some sort of sick marionette puppet. The Wind Whisperer's smile grew with every second it took me to realize what had been done. He finally erupted from the window, dropping Andy's small body at my feet. I fell to my knees, grasping my son's corpse with all my might as if I could somehow instill life back into him. Why? Why did you do this? I did your stupid trials. Why did you do this to him? He was innocent, only a child. I screamed through my tears. I was surprised. I had forgotten how it felt to have a strong parental urge, but now it's too late. I had squandered my chance with Andy. The Wind Whisperer, his mind ever present, loomed over me. It is simple. I lied. I said that you had only one more trial after your first. That was not true. This is your final trial. The test of death. I sniffed, hugging Andy's cold form to me as if I could protect him from further harm. Why would I want to do another trial if you've already killed my son? Thomas, this is your final trial. I can grant your son new life, but such a task is not cheap. To grant life, I must take a life to correct the upset imbalance that has been created. The test of death is the simplest one, but with the biggest consequence. Can you offer your own life as payment for your son's? Or will your negligence and cowardice get the better of you? Bear in mind, this isn't as simple as just saying you will trade your life for his. No, I will search your heart and soul to see if you truly mean it. Do you agree to this final trial? Those words echoed in my head, the prospect of my death weighing heavily on my mind. And then thought of all the wrongs I had done, how poorly I had treated my son. If this was my only chance to be a good father, then so be it. What will happen to Andy after I'm gone? I asked. The Wind Whisperer looked down at the corpse in my arms. He will awaken here, with no memory of what happened. I gently laid Andy's body on the ground, kissed his tiny forehead, and approached the Wind Whisperer. Will you know that I loved him? I pondered, not really asking, just thinking aloud. If you pass the trial, he will. The Wind Whisperer replied solemnly, his ever-present grin leaving his face for the first time. I took one last look at my son, took a deep breath, and closed my eyes. Fuck it. I watched as the Wind Whisperer ripped my soul from my body. I felt him scar the very depths of my being to find any inclination of doubt in what I was doing, but he found none. As my physical form was eviscerated and the last bit of semblance of consciousness began to fade away, I saw it. I saw Andy's body stir, and I was finally at peace. Don't ignore the motion sensors. Things have been tough ever since Mom passed. Dad's a complete shell of himself, and I've let on my own to sort through the abundance of emotions I'm going through. It was actually a relief when Dad told me he was going to head to the cabin for the week. Can you watch the plays for me, Jared? He had asked. Yeah, I had to watch the house, but that's not a big deal. 2-story home with AC, stocked fridge, big screen, and a hot tub. It's not like it had been a struggle to get by. Although the place does still have landlines for some reason. Before he left, Dad told me reception would be spotted at the cabin per usual. I really needed anything, I should call between 9 and 11 when he'd be out at the local bar. Told him not to worry about anything, and I highly doubted I'd need him. I couldn't reach him. I should call Terry next door if I needed anything. Well, it didn't take long before I needed him. I was soaking in the hot tub when lights in the backyard turned on. The lights back there are motion sensors. Silly me, I forgot to set the security system. What was the code again? This thing stood, the alarm wouldn't go off if someone broke in. Thankfully, that animal or whatever it had triggered the motion sensors and reminded me. I'll call Dad and ask for the code. It was getting close to 11, so if I wanted to catch Dad, I needed to call him quick. My finger scrolled through until I saw the D's in my contact. I hit call, it began to ring. Suddenly the landlines did as well. The landline read Jared's cell. Looked back at my cell. I dialed Dad home, not Dad's cell. Silly me. Moved my finger to the red phone icon, but before I could push it, the landline stopped ringing. I hadn't hung up yet. Had it gone to voicemail? Confused, I raised my cell to my ear. No voicemail. Only silence. Actually, I think I do hear something. Is that static or breathing? The fuck? My heart was pounding. I immediately hung up the phone. What the fuck was that about? Taking a few deep breaths, my heart rate began to slow. There's no way I heard breathing. That would be ridiculous. It had to be the phone malfunctioning or something. I exhaled deeply, then began to laugh. What a way to start off my week alone. My cell began to ring. The ringing caused my body to flinch. Clearly still a little jittery. Would be calling at this hour anyway. Looking at my phone, the call was from Dad home. My eyes widened. The phone continued to ring in my hand. In a panic, I hit decline. The backyard was illuminated by light once again. This was all happening so fast. Before I could react to the lights, my phone started ringing again. Dad home was calling. Tears began to well up in my eyes, and I hit answer. Hello? I asked. There was no verbal response, but there was something else. A slow inhale followed by a slow exhale. My chest tightened. Hello? I repeated myself. More breathing in return. Keeping the phone to my ear, I began moving towards the kitchen. Once there, I grabbed a large kitchen knife. I ducked behind the island. The breathing of the other line had ceased. I peeked my head out to survey my surroundings. The open and spacious nature of Dad's home came in handy here. The kitchen was about 15 by 15 with the island directly in the center and at the edge of the house. Peeking around the corner allowed me to see the entirety of the living room. It's a large, wide space directly in front of me. I leaned to the other side of the island to peek in the other direction. There were doors for a theater room, bathroom, and office. Down a little further was a little opening to the left. If you went in there, you'd see the front door and both flights of stairs. The office had two ways to get in. One clearly visible from the kitchen, and the other on the corner in that opening. There were 4 landlines in the house. One in the kitchen, one in the office, one upstairs, and one in the basement. Ruling out the kitchen meant this person could only be in one of those 3 places. I sat there behind the island. My body couldn't stop shaking. I set down my phone and held the knife in both hands. If someone was here and coming from me, I was going to need more than a knife. I knew Dad kept the gun in his office safe. I peeked around the corner again. The theater room, bathroom, and office doors were all slightly creaked open. Fuck. If I was going to protect myself, I needed to risk it. I inhaled deeply. As soon as I began my exhale, I shot to my feet and tiptoed toward the office. Each step creaked slightly. It was the only sound that could be discerned. Reaching the door, I wanted to pause for fear of what may be inside. Pointed the knife into the crease with my clammy hands and gently opened the door. The only light in the room came from the opening. Gently, I closed the door behind me and left it creaked slightly open as it had been before. Crawling under Dad's desk, I reached for the safe. It wasn't there. Why wasn't it there? Where could it? Oh no. Before he left, Dad had told me he'd moved the safe to basement. The walkout basement. The door I'm almost certain I had forgotten to lock. Also where another one of the landlines were. Then I heard movement. Someone was here. I sat on the knife so no light would reflect and curled into a ball. Outside the office, I could hear the faint sound of footsteps and the sound of a door swinging open. That was the theater room. Moments later, I heard a thud. Another door was flung open, this one closer. The bathroom. That was followed by another thud. That meant the office was next. Do I keep hiding or do I make a run for it? I decided to run. As the sound nearing the office grew in intensity, I shot through the other door and exited the office and ducked around the corner. The door of the office opened. Then there was silence. I held my breath waiting for something, anything to happen. Seconds kept passing by. Everything was still. Please, please, please. Slam the door so I can run. Still no sound. I could feel the little beads of sweat run down my forehead. Finally, I heard the other door slam shut and used that noise to disguise my run to the stairs. Knowing where the intruder was had lessened my apprehension of going downstairs. I maintained quiet feet but quickly maneuvered down the steps. As I reached the bottom, I saw that the walkout door was wide open. I didn't have time to worry about such things. Darting towards the back, I found the safe. I punched in the code. Wrong code. The safe beeped. I heard movement upstairs. You have got to be kidding me. I punched it in again. Wrong code. I could hear more sound upstairs. Whoever was up there was being much louder than before. Frantically, I attempted one more time. If this didn't work, I'd have to make a run for it. The safe door swung open. I grabbed the gun and hid. While hiding, I turned the safety off and checked to see if it was loaded. Thankfully, it was. The creaking of floorboards could be heard overhead. Each sound grew nearer to the top of the stairs. I closed my eyes and tried to focus. Steadying the gun, I aimed where the intruder would be, my line of sight on the stairs. The sounds grew increasingly louder. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Even in the dark, I could make out his all-black outfit and ski mask. One arm was raised, and it looked like they were casually massaging their neck. The figure hobbled awkwardly. Each step looked more off-balance than the last. I waited until they reached the easiest spot for me to aim. I fired the gun. A brief moment passed, and then the body came tumbling down the remaining stairs. Flicking on the lights, I kept my distance, gun pointed at the intruder. Red stains soaked the area beneath the man's body. Kicking at him a few times, there was no reaction from his limp body. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to flip the man over. He was bleeding immensely from his neck. Removing the ski mask, I immediately became confused. This person was a complete stranger to me. Why would they break into my home? What's the purpose in doing so? What was the wound in their neck? I fired a gun at this man, yet the wound wasn't a bullet hole. It looked like it had been slashed. Looking over to the stairs, there was a hole in the wall. Had I missed? Then how did... It was then that the landline began to ring. It read Jared's cell. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, this sort of content, be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a comment below. There will be a link to this story in the description, as well as a link to my Patreon page, where you can subscribe to my magazine/book collection called Enter Madness. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.